For the first time in centuries, he did not resist it. His eyes closed. And in the quiet that followed, beneath the pain, beneath the unraveling, there was only one thought left. She lived. That was enough. "Somewhere inside the hospital," Lena cried once more, but not for long. She was warm. She was safe. She was no longer alone. And though she would never remember the darkness that carried her there, a part of it would remain. Not as fear, but as something quieter. Something that one day might feel like being watched over, even in the light. He did not die. Death, it seemed, was not so easily granted. When the vampire opened his eyes again, the world had changed. The light was gone. Night had returned. He lay where he had fallen. The alley wrapped once more in shadow and silence. The rain had come back too, soft this time, almost careful, as if the city itself had decided not to disturb him further. For a long moment he did not move. He listened. Not for danger, not for prey, for something that was no longer there. The absence was immediate, total. No small heartbeat, no uneven breaths, no fragile presence tucked against him. Nothing? His chest tightened. Not with breath, but with something far more unfamiliar. "Good," he said quietly. The word sounded wrong. He pushed himself upright. His body protested, skin still marked from the sun's punishment, movements slower, heavier than before. The damage would heal. It always did. But something else would not. He looked down at his hands. Empty. Of course they were. "This was correct," he continued, more firmly now. "She is where she should be. Safe, warm. Surrounded by those who understood her needs. Not with him. The logic was clear. Unassailable. So why—" his thoughts stopped. A sound. Faint. Distant. A heartbeat. Not hers, but close enough to stir something restless inside him. He turned his head slightly, listening more carefully. Beyond the alley, past the narrow streets, rising above the hum of the city, a cluster of life. Familiar. The hospital. He stilled. "This is unnecessary," he said, but he was already standing. The building loomed brighter at night, windows glowing, filled with movement and purpose. Life continued there without pause, without hesitation. He remained across the street at first, half hidden in shadow, watching. He could hear so much from here, the rush of footsteps, the murmur of voices, the steady rhythm of dozens, hundreds of heartbeats layered over one another. It should have been noise, but he searched through it anyway, carefully, patiently, and then there, small, steady, stronger than before, his focus sharpened instantly. Lena. He didn't move closer. Not yet. He simply listened. Her heartbeat was no longer erratic, no longer fading. It carried a quiet strength now, supported by everything he could not provide. The tension in him eased, just slightly. "You see," he murmured to no one. "This is better." A pause. Then softer. "For you." He should leave. There was nothing more to do, no reason to remain. And yet, he stepped forward. Just one step, then another. Crossing the street without thinking, drawn not by hunger, but by something far more difficult to name. He reached the outer wall of the hospital and stopped again. Closer now, closer than necessary. Her heartbeat was clearer here. He could almost— No, he closed his eyes. This is enough. It had to be. Inside, Lena made a small sound, barely more than a breath. But he heard it, and something in him answered. His hand lifted slightly, as if reaching toward the wall, toward her, toward something he had already given up. Then it fell. Slowly, deliberately. "I will not interfere," he said. A promise, a boundary. Because if he crossed it, if he stepped inside again, he did not know if he would be able to leave. The thought lingered longer than he expected. Then, finally, he turned away. The night welcomed him back without question. But as he disappeared into it, something had changed. Not in the world, in him. He still moved like a shadow, still hunted, still endured the endless stretch of dark hours and empty time. But now, somewhere in the city, a small heartbeat existed that he would always recognize. And sometimes, without meaning to, he would find himself near that building again, not entering, never crossing the line, just listening, making sure. Because even a creature of the night, it seemed, could learn to guard something it would never truly have. And far above him, in a quiet hospital room filled with soft light and careful hands, Lena slept peacefully, unaware that the darkness she had once been left in had followed her, not as a threat, but as a silent, watchful promise. Time, for him, had always been meaningless. Now, it learned to move in pieces. Nights became visits, not close, never inside, but always near enough to hear. Lena's heartbeat changed first, stronger, fuller. No longer the fragile flutter he had found in the alley. It settled into something steady, something certain, like it had chosen to stay. He noticed the differences immediately. "She improves," he would murmur from the shadows across the street, as if someone were there to answer. Days, though he did not live them, began to leave marks too, not on him, but on her. He could hear it in the subtle shifts, the rhythm of sleep, the small waking sounds, the early, uncertain cries that grew less frequent as others learned her needs. She was not alone anymore. That should have been the end of it, but it wasn't. On the seventh night, something changed. He arrived as he always did, silent, unseen, settling into the familiar darkness where he could listen without being noticed. But tonight her heartbeat was different, not weak, not in danger, just unsettled, uneven in a way that didn't belong. The vampire stilled. Then came the sound. Crying. Not loud, not desperate, but persistent. A soft, restless sound that didn't fade, didn't resolve. He frowned slightly. "She is cared for," he said under his breath. "They will tend to it." He waited. Minutes passed. The crying continued. Footsteps came and went inside. Voices murmured. Someone tried to soothe her. He could hear the motion, the shifting, the attempts. But Lena did not settle. The vampire's fingers curled slightly at his side. "This is not necessary," he told himself again. Another minute, another soft, restless cry. His head tilted, listening deeper, not just to her, but to everything around her. The others. The nurses. The distant machines. The layered heartbeats. All normal. All insufficient. His jaw tightened. She was quiet, he murmured. Before she had been alone with him. The realization landed slowly, unwelcome, clear. He exhaled once, sharply, then moved. Getting inside was easier at night. Doors opened for others. He passed through unnoticed, a gap in attention, a shadow where no one thought to look twice. The bright lights still pressed against him, unpleasant, but not deadly now. Not like the sun. He followed the sound, closer, closer. Each step tightening something in him he could no longer ignore. Lena's cries were clearer now, small, strained, tired. He reached the doorway and stopped. Inside, a nurse rocked her gently, murmuring soft reassurances. The room was calm, controlled, everything as it should be, except Lena wasn't calming. Her tiny face was scrunched, breaths uneven, fingers flexing as if searching for something that wasn't there. The vampire stood in the hall, unseen. "This is not my place," he said quietly. The words felt weaker than before. Inside, Lena cried again, softer now, but more tired. Something in him gave way. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough. He stepped forward. The nurse didn't notice at first. Why would she? He moved where attention slipped, where the mind chose not to focus. But as he reached the crib, Lena's crying hitched, then stopped. Instantly. The nurse blinked, startled. "Well, there we go," she murmured, confused but relieved. "Guess you just needed a moment, huh?" She adjusted the blanket, gave a final gentle pat, and after a pause, seeing no more distress, stepped away. The vampire remained, still as stone. Lena's eyes were half open, unfocused, but calm, searching. He didn't touch her, didn't dare, but he stood close enough for her to sense, close enough for her to know. Her tiny hand lifted weakly, fingers curling in the air, the same motion, the same reaching. He hesitated. Then slowly, carefully, he extended one finger. She grasped it. Warm, certain. The contact sent something sharp and unfamiliar through him, stronger than before, stronger than anything he had allowed himself to feel. "You are unreasonable," he said quietly. Lena made a soft sound, content, as if the world had righted itself. He watched her for a long moment, something unsteady forming beneath the surface of his stillness. "This cannot continue," he added. But he didn't pull away. Not immediately. Only when her grip loosened, when sleep began to take her again, did he slowly withdraw his hand. She did not cry this time. The room remained calm. Normal, as if nothing had happened. The vampire stepped back into the shadows, retreating the same way he had come, unseen, unnoticed, but not unchanged. Outside, the night felt different again. Not emptier, not full, something in between. He looked once toward the glowing windows. "You will not remember this," he said. A statement. A boundary. A lie he wasn't entirely sure of anymore. Then he turned and disappeared into the dark once more. But the next night, and the one after that, he came back. Not to take. Not to interfere. Just, when she cried, to be there. And somehow, impossibly, that was enough. The visits became a pattern, not every night. That would be dangerous. But often enough that something quiet and invisible began to form between them. Lena grew. He could hear it in everything. Her heartbeat deepened, less frantic, more sure. Her breaths stretched longer. The small, uncertain cries of a newborn slowly gave way to softer sounds, then stranger ones. Coos. Little bursts of noise that had no meaning and yet somehow meant everything. The first time he heard it, he froze in the hallway outside her room. "What was that?" he murmured. Inside, Lena made the sound again, short, almost amused. He stepped closer without thinking, peered inside. She wasn't crying. She wasn't restless. She was looking. Not at anything in particular. Just existing in a way that felt entirely new. He stayed there longer than he should have, long enough to realize, "She is learning," he said quietly. The thought settled deep. Learning meant change. Change meant distance. The realization did not sit well. Weeks passed. Then more. Time began to leave marks he could not ignore. Lena was moved from one room to another. Different rhythms, different caregivers, new voices layered into the familiar ones. He learned them all, not their names, their patterns. Who was gentle, who was tired, who lingered an extra second when she cried, and who didn't. He did not like that last one. "This place is insufficient," he muttered one night, watching from the doorway as Lena fussed longer than she should have. But she was still safe, still cared for, still alive. That mattered more than perfection. It had to. The first time she truly saw him, everything changed. It wasn't supposed to happen. He had always been careful, existing just outside attention, slipping through perception like mist. Adults were easy. Their minds filled in gaps, ignored inconsistencies. But Lena had no expectations, no assumptions, no reason not to see what was there. He stepped into the room as he always did, silent, unseen, and her eyes locked onto his. Clear, focused, certain. The vampire stopped. Completely. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then, Lena smiled. It wasn't practiced. Not learned. Just a small instinctive lift of her mouth, soft and bright and entirely unafraid. The vampire stared. "No," he said quietly. "That is incorrect." She made a small, happy sound. Her arms moved, clumsy, uncoordinated, but reaching. For him. The room felt suddenly too still, too exposed. "You do not understand what you are seeing," he continued, though the words lacked their usual certainty. Lena didn't care. She kicked slightly, making another sound, impatient this time. Waiting, expecting. The vampire hesitated. This was different. This was not instinct or comfort in the dark. This was recognition, choice. Slowly, far more slowly than anything else he ever did, he stepped closer, each movement deliberate, measured, as if the air itself might break if he moved too quickly. He stopped beside the crib. Lena's eyes never left him. Still smiling, still reaching. "You should not welcome me," he said. But his voice had changed. Quieter, unsteady at the edges. He looked down at her, at the small, growing person she was becoming, and something in him shifted again. Not cracked this time. Opened just a little. Carefully, he reached out. Not just a finger now. His hand. Lena grabbed it instantly, both hands this time, warm, alive, certain. The contact was stronger than before, no longer fragile, no longer fleeting. She held on like she meant to. The vampire exhaled slowly. "I see," he murmured, and this time, he did. This was no longer just survival, no longer just protection. This was connection, and it was no longer one-sided. Lena laughed, a small, breathy sound that seemed far too big for her tiny body. The vampire went still again. "You are pleased," he said. The idea felt important, dangerous. He should leave. He knew that. This was already too much. Too visible, too real. But for the first time, he didn't move. He stayed there beside her as she held onto his hand like it belonged to her. And in that quiet hospital room, filled with soft light and the steady hum of life, a creature of the night stood in plain sight of something that did not fear him, did not misunderstand him, did not look away. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, he didn't feel like a shadow. He felt seen. He began to make mistakes again. Not careless ones, not loud, obvious, dangerous mistakes. Small ones. Staying a second too long, standing a little too close to the light, letting his presence linger where it should have slipped away. All because Lena now expected him. It started subtly, a shift in her rhythm. She slept differently on the nights he came, more settled, less restless. When he was late, her quiet unease returned, a soft fussing that no one else quite understood. "They checked everything," one nurse whispered once. "She's fine, she just won't settle." The vampire stood just beyond the doorway, listening. She is waiting, he realized. The thought was complicated. "You should not do that," he said quietly that night, stepping into the room. Lena stopped fussing immediately. Of course she did. Her head turned, eyes finding him faster now, more certain. And then, that same smile. Always that smile. "You reinforce poor behavior," he added, though there was no weight behind it. She made a small sound in response, kicking her legs slightly as if arguing. He exhaled. "Very well." She learned him quickly, faster than she should have. Not his nature, not what he was, but him, the sound of his stillness, the shape of his presence, the way the air changed when he entered the room. Even when he tried to remain distant, to observe instead of approach, she would find him, eyes searching, waiting, until he stepped closer. It became predictable, and that made it dangerous. One night he arrived to something new. Voices. Low. Curious. Concerned. He stopped in the hallway, listening. "It happens around the same time," a nurse was saying. "I've noticed it too," another replied. "She calms down suddenly, like someone's here." A pause. But no one is. The vampire went very still. Inside the room, Lena made a soft, restless sound, not yet crying. "But close. She's doing it again," the first voice said. Footsteps shifted. Someone stayed. Watching, waiting. The vampire's gaze moved toward the doorway. A problem. For the first time since he had brought Lena here, his presence had been noticed. not seen, but felt. That was enough. Inside, Lena's restlessness grew. A small sound escaped her. Uncertain, searching. The vampire did not move. He could leave. He should leave. This was exactly the moment he had anticipated, the point where this connection became a risk. To her, to himself, to everything. The logical choice was simple. Clear, necessary. Lena made a soft, strained cry. The nurse stepped closer to the crib, trying to soothe her. It's okay. I'm right here. But Lena did not settle. The vampire closed his eyes. No, he said quietly. Not to the situation, to the conclusion. He stepped forward. The nurse didn't see him. Not directly, but she hesitated. Just slightly, as if something had brushed against her awareness. The air shifted, a presence she couldn't explain. And then, Lena went silent. Completely. The nurse blinked. There it is again, she whispered. Lena's eyes were fixed on something just past her shoulder, focused, bright. The nurse turned instinctively. There was nothing there. Of course there wasn't. But for a brief moment, she felt it. A chill. Not cold exactly. Just different. Then it was gone. Lena cooed softly, calm, content. The nurse let out a slow breath. Weird, she murmured. But she stepped back, and after a moment, she left the room. The vampire remained, closer than he had ever allowed himself to be while someone else was present. Too close. He looked down at Lena. You are becoming problematic, he said. She smiled, unbothered, certain. Her hand lifted again. He didn't hesitate this time. He let her take it. You will draw attention, he continued. They will begin to question. Lena squeezed his finger, a small, firm grip, as if she understood something deeper than his words. His expression shifted, just slightly. And I will have to leave. The words hung there. He didn't know what he expected. But Lena didn't cry, didn't protest. She simply held on to him, calm and warm and impossibly trusting, as if the idea itself made no sense, as if leaving was not something he could do. The vampire stared at her for a long moment, then slowly, you assume much, but his voice had softened. And when he finally pulled his hand away, it was slower than before, reluctant. Outside, the night felt tighter, less forgiving. He stood across the street again, watching the building with a new awareness. They are beginning to notice, he said. This could not continue as it was. Something would have to change, for her safety, for her future.